It's 1960. Africa is waking up.
This is a day of rejoicing and misgiving.
The British, the French, the Belgians are leaving. And into that vacuum, quietly, patiently, walks a country that nobody in the West was watching. China. Not with guns, not with bombs. With roads, railways, ports and loans. In the 60 years since, China has pulled off something no Western power managed to do. It made itself indispensable to an entire continent. This is a story of how China conquered Africa without firing a single shot. Here is something Western foreign policy got spectacularly wrong. After colonialism ended, Africa was left with brutal inheritance and almost no infrastructure, no railways connecting inland mines to ports, no highways linking cities, no power grids capable of running a modern economy. The infrastructure gap was and still is staggering. And who was supposed to fix it? The World Bank had conditions. The IMF had austerity requirements. Western aid came with lectures about governance, human rights, democracy. By the late 1990s, African governments were exhausted by it. They needed roads built, not seminars attended. And then China showed up. No condition, no lectures, no checklists. Just tell us what you need, we will build it. That offer was irresistible. In 2000, China launched FOCAC, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. 53 African nations signed up. It wasn't just a trade deal, it was a long-term relationship. China had found the opening nobody else. Here is where it gets interesting. Because China did not just write checks, it showed up with workers, engineers and cranes. Look at the numbers. Between 2013 and 2023 alone, just one decade, Chinese companies signed construction contracts in Africa worth more than $700 billion in construction contracts. In 2013 to 2023, more than 12,000 kilometers of roads and railways built, 20 ports constructed or upgraded, more than 80 power facilities built across the continent. Let's look at the specific cases. Kenya, the Mombasa-Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway, a $4 billion project financed by China's Exim Bank. Before it opened in 2017, journey from Mombasa to Nairobi took 12 grueling hours by road. The railway cut it dramatically. For Kenya's export economy, connecting the country's biggest port to its capital was transformational. Ethiopia. The Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway, 756 kilometers of track connecting a landlocked nation to the sea. Built by Chinese firms. Financed by Chinese banks. Opened in 2018, Ethiopia, one of Africa's fastest growing economies, suddenly had a lifeline to global shipping. Zambia. Go back even further, to the 1970s. China built the Tazara Railway, a 1,100-mile line connecting Zambia's copper mines to coast of Tanzania. This was the first major pan-African infrastructure project. China wasn't new to this game. It had been playing it for 50 years. The pattern is clear. Wherever Africa had raw materials trapped in land, copper, cobalt, lithium, oil, China built the infrastructure to move them out. Not out of charity, out of strategy. This is a part of the Chinese government would prefer you not to think about too hard. Because the roads and railways are not random. They form corridors. Corridors that run from mining regions, Zambia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Zimbabwe, straight to ports on the African coast. 60% of all China-Africa trade is raw material access. China needs cobalt for electric vehicle batteries. It needs copper for its manufacturing base. It needs lithium, manganese, iron ore. Africa has all of it. The Democratic Republic of the Congo alone holds an estimated 70% of the world's cobalt reserves. Guinea is sitting on the largest iron ore deposit ever discovered, the Simandou project, which China is now heavily invested in. So when China builds a road in Zambia, it's not philanthropy, it's supply chain management. China is building the arteries of its own industrial future, and Africa is the bloodstream. Now for the part that keeps economists awake at night. All of this infrastructure, Who pays for it? African governments do, via loans from Chinese state banks. More than $150 billion in Chinese loans to Africa over 20 years. $50 billion in Chinese loans in 2016 alone, more than all Western creditors combined. The pitch sounded perfect. Low interest rates, long repayment terms, no political strings attached. But the fine print was brutal. Many loans came with collateral clauses, secret terms that prevented countries from restructuring debt collectively. Several were tied to specific Chinese contractors who had to be hired regardless of cost. And in nations without strong institutions, the terms were often opaque, even to the government signing them. The consequences arrived on schedule. Zambia defaulted on its external debt in 2020, the first African country to do so during the pandemic. It spent years in debt restructuring talks, only reaching a final deal in 2024 with China as a major creditor at the table. Ghana and Ethiopia both entered debt restructuring under the G20's common framework in 2024 and 2025. In Kenya, the government was fined over $10 million by Chinese banks for falling behind the standard gauge railway loan repayments. And in Djibouti, a tiny nation of barely 1 million people, China controls the port. The country owns so much to Chinese creditors that analysts began questioning whether it retained full sovereignty over its own coastline. Critics call this debt trap diplomacy. The theory: extend unsustainable loans, then use default as a leverage to extract political or strategic concessions. China denies it. Scholars debate it. But the outcome is China has significant influence over these courtiers. Here is the part China really doesn't want to talk about. In 2017, China opened its first overseas military base in Djibouti. Beijing called it a logistics support facility for anti-piracy operations. By 2024, it had evolved into something far larger: a naval pier, advanced communications infrastructure, expanded storage facilities, a full-spectrum hub. 17 UN peacekeeping missions with the People's Liberation Army participation. $100 million in military aid pledged to African forces at the 2024 Beijing summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. $200 billion invested in African projects, including 78 ports by 2025. China is reportedly eyeing additional bases, potentially Equatorial Guinea and Angola on the Atlantic coast. Think about what that means. China would have military footholds on both coasts of Africa, Atlantic and Indian Ocean, straddling the continent's most vital shipping routes. For decades, China criticized Western nations for maintaining overseas military bases, called them expansionist. Now it has one of its own. The playbook is identical. The ideology is different. The result is the same. So, did China conquer Africa? The honest answer is, it depends on who you ask. Ask a Kenyan engineer who took the new railway to Nairobi, and the answer might be yes. And it's a good thing. Ask a Zambian economist watching his country negotiate debt terms from a position of total weakness, and the answer is very different. China did not invade Africa, it invested in it. But investment, when it comes with hidden clauses and strategic intent, is a different kind of power. The West left an infrastructure vacuum. China filled it. The West attached political conditions to its money. China attached something else: loyalty, dependency, and slowly leverage. The question for Africa's leaders is not whether China is a partner or a predator. It's whether Africa can make sure that the roads China built, the ports China financed, and the deals China signed ultimately serve African people. The conquest did not look like a conquest. That's what made it so effective. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching.